welcome to Power Talks. In today's special episode, we are discussing about Nepal's peace process, constitution drafting and elections. Our new constitution is being written, and as you know, with your one stay in Nepal, the politicians are not that too serious sometimes. How will UN play an important role in getting it drafted on time or helping the constitution writers to write a good constitution that takes Nepal way ahead in the future in comparison to other countries around the world?
Well, only Nepalis can write Nepal's constitution, that's very clear. So you're going to have to keep your expectations high of your politicians. But we like to say as well, writing a constitution is far too important to be left only to politicians. So I think that's very exciting. But it's very clear at the end of the day, the international community is very much lined up to support Nepal in its constitution writing process. What we can do is we can bring the experience of the world to Nepal's doorstep, or we can take some Nepalis to see, obviously, that experience around the world. We've also been supporting it as the UN, this outreach effort, so to make sure that logistics and things like that don't become an obstacle for a CA member that wants to go out there and listen to his or her constituency. CA members can do all kinds of training, but at the end of the day, all we can do is provide support. We certainly can't be doing any writing for Nepalis.
What is your view on the constitution drafting of Nepal, which is a very crucial subject right now for us?
As one country which has maintained friendly relations with Nepal for almost 5 decades, obviously we are watching with great interest the progress in trying to transform Nepal from a unitary monarchy to a federal republic. And I think it is a fascinating experience. We all have to understand that any revolution and the evolution that follows it is not a problem-free process. If you look backward, the glorious revolution of April 2006, despite sadness that I feel for the families of those who perished during the revolution and the thousands that were injured throughout, I still think that relatively speaking, this was almost a clean revolution. And the process thereafter, all the political debates between the parties, it's part of the game. But overall, the major leaders of Nepal were able to keep Nepal together and to have a debate. And there are many crucial things to debate. After all, everyone is interested in building a new Nepal, a Nepal that will be a safe home for the Nepalese, where they can live in prosperity and peace. And drafting the constitution is part of it. Well, you do draft, hopefully, a constitution once and for all, like the American did in the 18th century. And therefore it's of great importance that all the political forces will join hands in order to give Nepali people the constitution they deserve.
The support of Denmark in the Constitution Assembly election was phenomenal. The awareness campaigns, the experts from Denmark and Europe and other parts of the world whom you sponsor to come to Nepal and give trainings, raise awareness among the people, and that came out very successfully. As a result, today we have a Constitution Assembly who's working hard to draft the new constitution. The very first bill abolished monarchy and formed Nepal as a democratic republic nation. Now, writing a good constitution, a constitution that foresees the future of Nepal over centuries, is very important. I understand it's for our leaders and our people to write the constitution, yet diplomats and foreign community and donors have always contributed in a positive way towards Nepal's peace process and development. Will we be seeing some more continued supports from Denmark?
Well, let me start out by saying that when we had the comprehensive peace agreement, my government declared it was ready to assist the peace process with financial help and technical assistance. And as you rightly mentioned, we did that in connection with the CA election. We have now, together with the UN, supported a center that can help the CA members to find out what a constitution is all about and what to write it, how to write it. But it's of course for the CA members to write the constitution. We are in discussion with the CA and the government about the process, and we are of course willing to provide technical assistance in writing a constitution. But let me say one personal word from my own experience in Kenya and from my own experience in Denmark. If we take Denmark first, we have a constitution that is old. It was written in 1849 and it was then changed in 1953. And in many ways, that constitution does not, when we read the words, live up to a modern society. Nevertheless, the constitution works because we want it to work. You can write many, many words in a constitution. If you don't want it to work, it wouldn't work. And many issues should not be in the constitution, but should be in separate laws. In Kenya, they had a very, very good process involving all the people in writing and coming with ideas to how should the constitution be. Unfortunately, the constitution became too big, too complicated, and was never approved. So I think what you have to think very hard about and listen to the advice from well-known international expertise, that is to make sure that the Constitution is the framework that the Constitution is.
Inclusiveness is a subject that the Danish Embassy has been supporting in terms of awareness campaigns throughout the country. Despite the fact that Nepal has become a republic and we are supposed to share equal rights among our people, marginalized groups which consist of majority of population still suffers, especially Madeshis, Dalits, Janjatis and women. How far are we from the reality of inclusiveness, from achieving a proper inclusiveness for these groups?
It is in the Constitution of America that we should all be treated equal. And that has happened in Denmark. We have a philosophy of that everybody should have equal opportunities. We are not equal, we look different, we have a different brain, we may have been born by poor people or by rich people. But we should have equal opportunities. We have that respect for each other. Now your society has been built on a caste system. There were differences. Nonetheless, the demand now from the people of Nepal is we are equal and we should all be inclusive. We should all be part of it. And I read that as a demand for an equal share of the wealth of the country, and it is a demand that you and I should be in the same boat. It's a question of mindset. A lot of it can of course be done by law, but at the end of the day it is a mindset. It's a mindset that the one that wanted to exclude other, thinking that he or she was superior, realized that we are all human beings. This is the process Nepal is going through. I think changing that mindset will take time. But I hope everybody understands that if you want to have a well-functioning society, that demand must be fulfilled. That everybody has an opportunity, that everybody has equal rights to live in your beautiful country.
When you were talking about, during your tenure, the strengthening of Sri Lanka and Nepal ties, as we know, Sri Lanka has drafted the constitution 3 times and made several amendments. So there must be certain expertise in Sri Lanka in writing constitution. We are in history's crucial time of writing the first constitution of the Republic Nepal. How can we use your expertise in drafting our constitution or training our constitution writers?
Actually, my president, when he was here, this question was brought to the notice of him, and then he agreed that, you know, if a request is made, expertise can be provided from Sri Lanka. And as you said, you know, we have written constitution 3 times, and amendments, you know, went up to 17. So the lot of expertise in Sri Lanka in this sphere. So if a request is made, definitely my government will take that very positively and try to help.
You took your office last year after the Constitution Assembly elections and saw the formation of the Constitution Assembly. How do you envision India's role in this historical transitional phase of Nepal?
As you know, India and Nepal have shared a very close relationship. It is a relationship that is born out of historical ties, of geographical linkages, of cultural and religious linkages. In short, it is a relationship like a relationship between families, a relationship that is driven by the people to people. I think it is a great opportunity for India and for me personally to be here to see this historic transformation that is taking place in Nepal. And I have no doubt that it will make Nepal stronger, more prosperous, more stable, and an important partner in this region and with India.
The support of the delegation of European Commission to Nepal was phenomenal during the elections of Constitution Assembly. Now, what will be the continued support for the writing of the Constitution and the next election, which will be the parliamentary elections?
We were invited to observe the elections of last year in Nepal, and we were delighted. We responded positively. We have sent a massive presence of election observation, and the result of this observation was that overall the observers felt the elections were sufficiently reasonable and fair to make legitimacy for the situation that follows these elections. And of course they had many observations. There has been a report with about 4 pages of observations of how a next election should be prepared better. And a big chunk of these observations are linked to the democratization of the regime and to the rule of law in the country. And of course, many of these are linked to an efficient drafting of the new constitution of the country. We are offering both moral support and economic support for the constitution drafting. And furthermore, we had already a preliminary invitation from government of Nepal to observe the future elections, and the European Commission has already responded positively that we will try to factor it in our plan of election observations for the future, because we believe that the next elections could and should be even better than the previous one, and for that we will be tireless in assisting government of Nepal and the institutions of Nepal and the people of Nepal and the political parties of Nepal to do their proper preparations. And at this point I must say that the conduct of a good and fair election is a very lengthy process. It's not something you can produce overnight. It's something that you need to start planning and working on how to do it probably 2 years in advance. So now it's the good moment in Nepal to intensify the activity of preparing the next political competition round, which will be the big elections after the constitution drafting. We are firmly in favor of democracy. We will do whatever we can to help the democratic process in Nepal, and also we are convinced that Nepal has a democratic future, and in fact Nepal has a future full stop. Nepal will progress.
You have seen Nepal progress politically over the last 5 years. How do you assess this growth or this change, and how do you see the future of Nepal in terms of positive growth or negative growth?
Well, it's been remarkable, I think, that to take the broader view, just to compare where we are now in Nepal with where we were 3 years ago. 3 years ago there was a war going on, a debilitating, violent, nasty, unpleasant war with massive human rights violations. Today there's no war. Today there is largely peace in this country, and that's something I think that Nepalis are thankful for. But of course, looking close up and short term and at what's going on in the ground, it's not all rosy by any means. There is still a lot of violence in this country. Violence is still very much part of politics, particularly in the south of the country. There are shortages of everything. There are shortages of electricity, there are shortages of water, there are shortages of fuel. Some of these things are man-made shortages, some of them are, of course, owing to nature and natural processes. And there is also a culture of achieving your political aim through threats, through violence, through the band, through the enforced shutdown and stoppage. So those things, of course, are much gloomier, and they are something that this country has to work through. I think in terms of the political situation, we're still seeing how the Maoists are doing in government. It hasn't been many months. It wouldn't be right at all to write off their record at the moment. They're doing some progressive things. So there's a lot going on in this country, a lot of conflicting dynamics, good and bad. We can't really see exactly where the country is heading.
Nepal has built upon 60 years of diplomatic relations with France. How has France looked at the recent political development and transition that Nepal has gone through in the last half decade?
By holding elections, abolishing the monarchy, choosing a president and a prime minister, and finally forming a coalition government, Nepal has made enormous progress in its political transformation. So big change, so huge change in 2 or 3 years. This is amazing. How many countries could have this process in so short time? Until now, we can say that the peace process in Nepal has been a success story. But there are still some challenges. The process is not over. It's still on track. And the respect of the law, the restoration of the authority of the state, the implementation of the existing law, the improvement of efficiency of the administration, and also maintain the public order. Also a lot of big stakes for Nepal. So a lot of progress have been made, but there are still some challenge on the road.
France is one of the Security Council members of the UN. What is your say on the army integration issue of Nepal, where we are talking about the integration of Nepal army with the People's Liberation Army?
I think it's the keystone of the peace process. The peace process since 2006 is on a good track. Nepal made a lot of progress in a very short time, less than 3 years, on the way of reconciliation, the transformation of the society, of the political structures. Now you have 2 big issues. First is the drafting of the new constitution, because we have an interim constitution, and this election of 2008 were above all for the election of a constituent assembly. But all the work is still to do. On the other end, you have the problem of the army and integration of the army. And as I told you, it's the keystone of the peace process. You have 2 armies. You have the Nepalese armies and you have the PLA. But the Nepalese army has never been defeated. So it's still intact with 95,000 people. And you have these 19,000 fighters still living in cantonments. This situation could go on for a long time. We had already 3 extension of the mandate of Hunmin. Now, the current mandate will end in the next July. So now the time is very short, 3 months. This week you will have a report of the General Secretary to the Security Council in New York about the progress of the peace process and the mandate of Hunmin in Nepal. But we noted that in the last few months that there was a growing tension between the government and the Nepalese army about the issue of the recruitment, about the issue of the head generals
suspended from
suspended, and also about this issue for the national games, and now the demand of explanation to the chief of army. So we think that Nepal, the path to the full reconciliation of Nepal is still long and difficult. But the army integration, any kind of army integration, we don't have to be involved. We are envoys. I'm envoy. I don't have to give advice to the government. But that is sure. It's the Nepalese government, the Nepalese army. They must reach to consensus quite quickly, because if we maintain this situation, it's a big danger on the peace process for the future.
Both of you have followed up with Nepal's conflict, peace process, democratic restoration very closely. And where do you see the country heading?
There are obviously challenges. There are these habitual ways that we have as individuals of dealing with change. It's good change, bad change, but mostly it's a lot of fear. But Nepal is this amazing place. I was here during, every episode in the last 8 years that was really the people taking to the streets and pushing forward. But they have to continue that. The hope is that they can continue now, that we won't fall back into, political leaders won't put on the old suits of armor that they had and fall back into their habits. Even if there are more political parties, they have to be more expansive and inclusive. Funny thing about security issues, which you're dealing with right now, is that political party leaders can use security issues to really kind of stall or prevent real participation. And that's something you have to look out for.
Well, I agree with Dee. I think you're at a very important time in the history of Nepal. You had a time several years back when the parties, the 7 parties were acting, major parties were acting very separately. And there was disarray among the parties, very fractious political conversation. When the parties formed the 7-party alliance, I think you saw what power could come from collaboration. And now, when you're dealing with important security issues, army integration issues, I think you again see a polarization of the parties. And I think what is hopeful for Nepal is if we can go back to some of that collaborative alliance spirit that existed several years ago, and have the parties realize that there's more to gain from them working together to resolve this problem and these contentious issues than working single-handedly and on their own agendas.
And recently in April, last month, we saw the interference of the government into the Nepal army issues. Now, how will this unnatural conflict contribute to the peace process and democracy of Nepal?
Well, Santosh, in post-conflict situations, it is always a critical issue as to how the military is going to be working in the context of the political culture. And Nepal is now just beginning to address that issue. The 2006 Comprehensive Peace Accord set some general language about army integration and rehabilitation of Maoists into the larger society. Today, there's great conflict over exactly what should be done. What does integration and rehabilitation actually mean? And so there's an opportunity, again, for the parties to address this issue in a thoughtful, collaborative manner. And I think over the coming weeks and months, it's critical that Nepal's leadership show the people that the parties with different views can sit down together and address this issue and then deliver to the people a very reasonable option that is sustainable for peace in the country going forward.
You took your office in Nepal in July 2008, right after the Constitution Assembly was formed here. And how do you see your role and Germany's continued support in the peace process, the drafting of the Constitution, and possibly the next parliamentary election as well?
Yes, I came indeed in a very interesting time. I actually came the day of the elections for the president and the vice president. I saw the forming of the government, and we always have expressed our commitment to the peace process. For example, our development cooperation never stopped, even in difficult times of the insurgency. Concerning the constitution drafting, that's an issue of being a lawyer by training, which interests me very much. We have there, and we intend to continue implementing a special program through our agency GTZ. GTZ stands for German Technical Cooperation, to accompany the constitution drafting process together with our Nepalese partners. And we had members of your Constituent Assembly who went to Germany. They proceeded then actually also to Switzerland in order to get information about the German federal structure. Of course, we also federal state. But I always stress that you have to choose your own constitution. We can only familiarize you with our own experience, the experience we have made. I think the parliamentary election, this is still sort of in the distant future, but within the EU we also express once that we sort of offer any help which would be maybe necessary in that field.
Thank you for being with us. We'll be back next week at the same time with another special episode. Till then, good luck and goodbye.